안녕하세요 여러분, 저는 미국에서 온 맥사라라고 합니다. 반갑습니다. 혹시 여러분 중에 뮤지컬 좋아하는 분 계실까요? 저는 뮤지컬 엄청 좋아합니다. 그래서 오늘의 주제인 브로드웨이에 대해서 읽었을 때 진짜 재밌게 읽었습니다. 그래서 우리 이제부터 한번 쭉 영어로 읽어보고 그 다음에 좀 어려운 단어가 있으면 그거 다시 한번 설명해주고 그 다음에 또 한번 영어로 읽어보겠습니다. 그러면 이제 시작해볼까요? Okay. Broadway refers to theatrical performances from the 41 theaters at the Theater District and Lincoln Center along the road of Broadway in Manhattan, New York City. Along with London's West End, Broadway represents the peak of commercial theater. The theater scene in New York began to grow in 1750 after the establishment of a theater company at the theater on Nassau Street by managers Walter Murray and Thomas Keane. Other companies began moving into New York as well. Early plays were mostly Shakespeare productions. During the early 1800s, Shakespeare productions continued to be a mainstay, while theaters focusing on operas and other variety shows also began to appear. Musicals, which represent the majority of modern Broadway, were introduced in the 1850s. The Elves, which opened in 1857, is considered the first long-running musical in Broadway. During the 1920s, many light-hearted musical productions were created as a result of the Roaring Twenties. The era also brought the emergence of influential playwrights such as Eugene O'Neill. 여기서 좀 어려운 단어 몇 개 나왔지만 다시 한번 볼 것이기 때문에 너무너무 걱정하지 마세요. 이제부터 100% 영어로 한번 설명해 볼게요. 괜찮으시겠어요? 할 수 있으니까 그냥 열심히 들어주시고 다 배우시게 될 거예요. 너무 걱정하지 마세요. Okay, so we're in English mode now. So the first word that we're going to look at is refer to. Refer to. So in Korean, we could say 뭐뭐에 언급하다 in order to translate this into Korean. So when you refer to someone, you speak of or mention them. So for instance, if we wanted to use this word in a sentence, we could say that, let's pretend I won a Nobel Peace Prize. I know, it's fine, it's amazing. So when you win a Nobel Peace Prize, usually you have to make a speech in front of a lot of people. During her Nobel Prize acceptance speech, she referred to her partner's work. So if there was someone that was working together with me on the project, I could refer to their work in their speech to make sure that they also get credit in the speech. So to talk about the article that we read, the word Broadway refers to the street in New York City where many plays and musicals are performed. So what does that mean exactly? So there's a place in New York City where there's a lot of theaters. You've got Aladdin, you've got Hairspray, you've got Phantom of the Opera, lots of singing, lots of acting, lots of dancing. That's very fun. And that place is called Broadway. So when we say Broadway, we are referring to this location in New York City. Okay, you understand? All right, I knew you got it. You're fine. So this word is a little bit long, I know, but we're going to pronounce it together, so don't worry. So this is actually two words put together. So together we say theatrical performance. Theatrical performance. So when you're pronouncing the word theatrical, make sure that you use your mouth to enunciate, to do the pronunciation very clearly, because if you have a lazy tongue like me, it can be easy to turn theatrical into doesn't sound good. Don't talk like that. Speak clearly. Say theatrical. Theatrical. The second word is a performance. A performance. So if you put on a show, maybe a concert, or maybe you do a dance recital, those are all different types of performances. But when you do a theatrical performance, usually it's a play, or in Korean we would say 연극. So a theatrical performance can be a play with no singing or dancing, that's just a play, or it can also have singing, dancing, acting, all those things together. Usually those are called a musical or an opera. So if it's only singing, no talking, you call it an opera. And maybe you've seen some opera singers on TV. They usually sing really high, super high. I can't sing that high. I could never be an opera singer. I think they're really amazing. Musicals are usually a little bit more modern. So it's new music and new stories being told, whereas operas are usually a little bit older. Okay, so let's do an example sentence. So this is a true story, actually. It's about me. So I was not interested in theatrical performance when I was very young. But after I saw Wicked live, I was hooked. So what does that mean exactly? I'll talk about it a little bit in Korean just to help you out. 그래서 제가 어렸을 때 사실 연극에 대해서 관심 딱히 없었습니다. 그냥 사람들이 무대에서 노래도 부르고 춤도 추는데 저는 아마 그렇게 재미있지 않을 거라고 생각했는데요. 근데 제가 엄마랑 같이 위키드라는 뮤지컬 보러 갔을 때 완전 매력에 빠졌습니다, 여러분. 그래서 영어로 좀 비공식적으로 말하자면 I was hooked 이렇게 말할 수 있습니다. So I didn't used to think that theatrical performances were very fun, but now I think they're very, very fun. And I listen to music all the time on my phone from Broadway. So I highly recommend that you check it out if you can. You could also say that many theatrical performances are held on Broadway. So if you go to America and you really want to see a good play or musical, you have to go to Broadway in New York City. That's where all the best plays are, and all of the best actors and actresses. So actually one time I went to see a theatrical performance on Broadway. It was so amazing. I went to see Aladdin with my friend in New York City. It was really expensive, but it was totally worth it. It was a really, really good experience. So you can actually watch theatrical performances here in Korea too. There's lots of musicals that you can watch in Seoul, and a lot of them are in English, so you can practice your English too. Okay, next word, commercial. Commercial. So maybe you've seen this word before. Maybe you even watched a commercial before you watched this video. So commercial has two different meanings. So the first one, the one that I just referred to, is commercial as in a 광고. So if you see an advertisement before a video, you can call that a commercial. And usually that's when you're using the word as a noun or a 명사. So, but then you can also use the word commercial as an adjective to describe as a 형용사. So as a 형용사. So in that context, you would say 산업의 아니면 산업적인 in Korean to describe commercial activities. So what is commercial? What does it mean exactly? Why do we call it that? So commercial has to do with trade, business, or making money. So commercial, it means I'm giving you money, you're giving me a product, you're trying to sell me something, I give you money. It's that exchange that's called commerce or commercial. So to talk about an area in a city where there's lots of shops and lots of things to buy, lots of places to spend money, I mean, we all like doing that. You could say in English that the commercial part of town has many shops. You can say it like this. Or you can also say that the play was a commercial success. So what does that mean exactly? To be a commercial success means that you succeed in making money. So if I spend $100 to put on a play with my friends, and I sell tickets to my neighbors, and I get $200 back from my neighbors for the tickets, then that's a commercial success because I just made $100. I made a profit. So that's how we say commercial success. Okay, next word is, can you guess the pronunciation? Establish. Establish. So when you establish something, you make it. You bring it into being. You found something. So this version of the word found, it's not literally like 찾다, you're like looking for something. To found, it means that you established perhaps a club or a 동아리 or some kind of organization. So for instance, you could say, I established a volunteering club at my high school. So I was at my high school, I really wanted to help people, wanted to do some volunteering, but there was no place where we could do that. So me and my friends established a volunteering club. So we made a new club, and now it makes it easier for everyone else to participate and do volunteer work. It's a good thing, right? You can also say that the theater company was established in 1871. So the company did not exist, but it was made, it was brought into being, it was established in 1871. So that's pretty old, right? I think that's about 150 years ago. So that's older than anyone that's alive on this planet. That company existed for 150 years, super long time. So I think that's really cool. I think though, because American history is really short, probably there's something similar in Korea that was established much longer ago. That's just my guess though. Okay, this is a fun word. Let's pronounce it together. Mainstay. Mainstay. So what is a mainstay exactly? So in Korean, you could say 무엇의 존재나 성공을 가능하게 하는 중심. So that's literally what it means. It makes something possible to exist or to succeed. So it's something that's very, very important. You could say it's crucial even. So this word actually originally comes from sailing. So you've seen like a boat, right, on the water, and there's a sail, a big sheet, a big white piece of fabric that flaps in the wind, and it helps steer the ship. So the ropes that connect the ship to the sails are really, really important, right? So the mainstay is the name of the rope that held the ship together. So it's really, really important. It made it possible for the boat to keep sailing. So it's very important. So if you think of a company kind of like a boat, if a boat sails, a company does what? A company wants to make money, right? So a mainstay in a company is something that makes it possible for that company to make money. So for instance, in the article we read about Shakespeare plays on Broadway. So in the 1800s, Shakespeare plays were a mainstay of early Broadway. So it's kind of interesting, right? Do you know who Shakespeare is? William Shakespeare? Raise your hands. So fun fact, I was actually in a Shakespeare play when I was young. I was in Romeo and Juliet. Can you guess who I was? Sorry, I was not Juliet. I know maybe I look the part. I was actually a really, really small character, but it was still super fun. But yeah, so in this sentence, Shakespeare plays were a mainstay of early Broadway. What they're trying to say is that Shakespeare plays were super important for making money in the early days of Broadway. Without the Shakespeare plays, maybe we wouldn't have Broadway today, because if they didn't make money, it would disappear. So it's very important. So another fun example is the fact that bread is the mainstay of many Westerners' diets. So what do you think the mainstay would be in Korea? Let's think. Maybe rice, maybe noodles. I think rice, though, is probably the mainstay of Koreans' diets. But unlike in Korea, in America, for instance, we eat a lot of bread. So you could say that it's a mainstay of our diet because it's super, super important. Okay, so this is a little bit of a fun word. It looks long, but I promise you it's not very hard. So it's called light-hearted. Light-hearted. So when your heart is heavy, you feel sad, right? Oh, you feel really, you have no energy. Oh, it feels really bad. When your heart is light, you feel super happy. You want to laugh. You want to play. It's really nice feeling, right? So in Korean, we could say that light-hearted means 편한 마음으로 즐기게 하기 위한. So it makes it easy to do something in a happy way, in a carefree way. You just feel really good because your heart is light. So in English, we could say it's cheerful, it's carefree, or it's not serious. So it's not something that will make you sad or upset. So I don't know about you, but I really agree with this sentence. She felt light-hearted after the awful test was over. Do you guys like taking tests? I do not like taking tests. So before I take a test, I feel really nervous. I feel really kind of scared. But then after the test is over, I feel like I lost 10 kilos just coming out of the room. It feels like my heart has been lifted. I feel light-hearted. So for another example, we could talk about different types of plays, maybe that you would see on Broadway. So in Broadway, there's two types of plays, a comedy and a tragedy. So comedies are usually light-hearted and playful, while tragedies are serious. So if you want to go see something funny and laugh a lot, you should go see a comedy play. But if you want to think a lot, maybe hear a story that it might make you cry, but it's a really good story, you could call that a tragedy. So for instance, Romeo and Juliet is a very, very famous tragedy play. So do you guys know how it ends? Well, I don't want to give you a spoiler, but this play is over 600 years old, so I think I can tell you the ending. So in the end, everyone dies. It's really sad. So it's not a very happy ending. So it's not very lighthearted. It's very serious. Not so good. But there are a lot of lighthearted plays on Broadway. For instance, there's actually a SpongeBob SquarePants musical that I heard about, and it looks very lighthearted. I listened to the music. It's actually very, very good. So if you want, you can go on YouTube and search for the SpongeBob musical if you want to watch a lighthearted musical. Okay, next word is emerge. 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 So we just pretend like this E is not here and you just pronounce it like emerge. So in English, we have a lot of words like that, just letters that don't do anything. I know it's very frustrating. The Hangul system, I think, is much better. Unfortunately, this is how English is. So when something emerges, it means that it comes out or it begins to exist. So there's two forms of the word that we can use. Emerge, that's the verb form, and emergence, which is the noun form. So in Korea, we could say emerge translates to 나오다, and then emergence is 출현. So it's kind of interesting, right? So to use the word emerge in a sentence, we could say that a shape emerged from the mist. So what's mist? It's water in the air, right? It's like a cloud on the ground. So you can't see very well. So imagine you're in the fog, you can't see, and then all of a sudden a shape appears, and it's a person. So the person emerged from the mist because you didn't see them. So they came out, they rised up, and they began existing in your eyes. So to use the word emergence, it's a little bit of a formal word. It sounds kind of fancy. It's a good word to use when you're writing an essay. You could say that the Roaring 20s, that means the 1920s, in the United States saw the emergence of many famous poets and playwrights. So what this means is that during the 1920s, a lot of new writers of plays and poems began coming out, began making their work. So lots of good books and lots of good plays from this time. So actually, one of my favorite books called The Great Gatsby, or in Korean, 위대한 개츠비, it was published during this time. So you could say that the author of that book, F. Scott Fitzgerald, emerged in the Roaring Twenties. Okay, I'm a little bit tired, so this is the last word for today. All right, we can get through this together, guys. I believe in you. All right, the last word is influential. Influential. So influential in Korean means 영향력이 있는. So if you have the power to change things, if you have the power to influence people, then you are an influential person. So influential can also be used for very important people or people whose work has changed something about their industry. So for instance, the mayor, the 시장 in a city, is the most influential man in city politics. So the mayor can also be a woman. I just want to say that first. But the most important thing here is that the mayor, they have a lot of influence, right? They have a lot of power. They can change a lot of things. So they're influential. Influential. Or to refer back to the author that I talked about just one moment ago for 위대한 개츠비, the author's name is F. Scott Fitzgerald. So F. Scott Fitzgerald is a very, very famous author of books in the United States. So you could say that he is one of the most influential writers of the 1920s. So that means out of all of the writers that made books and published poems and plays during the 1920s, he's one of the most important people because he changed how people write books and how they write plays. It's very exciting. So I think that all of you definitely have the potential to become influential members of society. So we gotta just study hard and then we become influential people. All right, so we went through a lot of pretty difficult words today, but now that we know all the new information, we can read through this article about Broadway all together in English. All right, so are you ready? Let's start. Broadway refers to the theatrical performances from the 41 theaters at the Theater District and Lincoln Center along the road of Broadway in Manhattan, New York City. Along with London's West End, Broadway represents the peak of commercial theater. The theater scene in New York began to grow in 1750 after the establishment of a theater company at the theater on Nassau Street by managers with Walter Murray and Thomas Keane. Other companies began moving into New York as well. Early plays were mostly Shakespeare productions. During the early 1800s, Shakespeare productions continued to be a mainstay, while theaters focusing on operas and other variety shows also began to appear. Musicals, which represent the majority of modern Broadway, were introduced in the 1850s. The Elves, which opened in 1857, is considered the first long-running musical in Broadway. During the 1920s, many light-hearted musical productions were created as a result of the Roaring Twenties. The era also brought the emergence of influential playwrights such as Eugene O'Neill. Okay, so what did we learn about today? So Broadway is a street with 41 theaters on the island of Manhattan in New York City. So very exciting. 41 different plays you can watch all the time. So Broadway represents the peak of commercial theater. So what they're trying to say here is that Broadway is the best theater that you can possibly watch in the world, except for perhaps London's West End, which is also very, very famous for plays, but I think Broadway is a little more famous. Maybe it's just because I'm American, I don't know, but it's our secret. So I didn't know this, but apparently theater has been around in New York City for a really long time. And actually, it makes sense because when you think about it, back in 1750, people didn't have phones, they didn't have YouTube, they couldn't watch movies at home or anywhere. So if you wanted to watch a story, you had to go to the theater. So Broadway began in 1750, which is super old. 1750, that's older than America. That's older than my country. So it's pretty interesting, I think. So during the early 1800s, Shakespeare productions were a mainstay. So most of the money that Broadway made was through selling tickets for Shakespeare shows. So if you ever hear of Hamlet, there's like the guy holding the skull like this. That's also a Shakespeare play. So it's called Hamlet. You're not actually supposed to say it out loud, or there's a superstition or a rumor or a myth that says something bad will happen. So hopefully nothing bad happens because I told you about it. So for a long time, it was mostly Shakespeare and kind of like sad stories. But then during the 1920s, or the Roaring Twenties, many light-hearted musical productions were created. So people decided to take plays, acting, and singing and dancing, and put them together and make musicals, which is the most fun thing ever. And so now the musicals that we know about today, it started from the 1920s, so almost 100 years. Pretty amazing. All right, so today we learned about the history of Broadway. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I learned a lot by reading this article. I really need to read more and more to learn about the things that I enjoy. All right, everybody, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you very... 다시 한번. All right, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon. Bye!